Welcome back. The Department of Justice says it's issued over 19,000 expungement certificates. Hundreds of ex-offenders, though, are struggling to have their criminal records cleared after having served their time. And, of course, they feel imprisoned in a way, despite being beyond correctional services centres. Let's unpack this story further. We're joined this afternoon by Advocate Glynnis Breytenbach. She's a member of the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee on Justice and Constitutional Development. Advocate Breytenbach, thanks as always for your time this afternoon. It's such an incredibly important story, particularly for people who still are dealing with criminal records for crimes that are, number one, older than 10 years and that they've not since had any other conviction. And something else comes to mind, people who were convicted under COVID-19 regulations.
It is problematic, and we all know that that it's exceptionally difficult to find employment once you have a criminal record, and so it does make reintegration into society, having served your time, exceptionally difficult. Expungement is something that is on offer. It's been the process came into effect in 2009, I think, as part of amendments to the Criminal Procedure Act. That made it easier for people to get their records expunged. The COVID-19 expungements are something different. They will be dealt with as one batch of expungements, and the previous minister, Ronald Lamola, undertook to finalise that process, and I'm quite sure that the current minister will honour that undertaking, and that will be dealt with sort of in the very short term, and certainly as soon as Parliament reconvenes and justice appears before the committee, we will be asking about how the progress in that process.
Yeah.
That is something that needs to be dealt with differently. It's not the run-of-the-mill kind of expungement.
I see. The Criminal Procedure Act was amended, right, as well, insofar as COVID-19 criminal records are concerned. I mean, it's been how long, shall we say, has it been since COVID-19? What's it been? It's been 2 years? I mean, you would have thought that perhaps that process would have been even completed at this stage.
Well, it should have been, in fairness. It's something that should have gotten priority attention. Many people during the COVID pandemic were encouraged to pay the admission of guilt fines, having been told that they would not, as a result, receive a criminal record. Well, then they now find that they did, and they have. And so that process is sort of being dealt with in its own channel. It's separate to the normal applications for expungement for other criminal convictions. One can hope that it will be done more quickly, but certainly it's a process that we have been keeping an eye on and will continue to keep an eye on, and it should, in all fairness, have been finalised before the rising of the last Parliament.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get some clarity, as you say, once Parliament reconvenes. So yes. People who can apply for expungement, these are people who have been charged, sentenced, even if I've been issued with a fine. This all falls under expungement, right?
There are a variety of categories. So, as you correctly pointed out, people who were convicted more than 10 years ago and have no other criminal convictions in the ensuing 10 years. And if you were 18 years or younger at the time of your conviction, then that period is 5 years.
I see.
If it was a minor offence, so something such as theft, shoplifting, that type of thing, you don't qualify for expungement if you were convicted, for instance, of something very serious like murder or rape.
Yeah.
If you have not received any other, if you have not been convicted of any other offence, and were given the option of a fine rather than imprisonment, then you also qualify for expungement. Then, of course, the category that the COVID-19 falls into, if you were told that by paying an admission of guilt you wouldn't get a criminal record, but you have, then you can apply for expungement. If you find less than 20,000 Rand, then you can also only, nothing else, just the fine. then you can apply for expungement. If you received only a suspended sentence, you can apply for expungement. And then, of course, if your name has been removed from the National Register of Sex Offenders or the National Child Protection Register, if relevant, then you can apply for expungement. But if your name is still on those lists, you can't.
Yeah, sure. It's obviously going to be it's a different process when it comes to sexual and violent crimes, isn't it? If I have been found guilty of a sex crime or a crime of violence, might I apply for the expungement and be rejected on certain, whatever the basis might be, even if it falls within that 10-year period?
You can apply, and nothing could prevent you from applying, but it would depend on a whole range of different, more seriously considered circumstances. If you've been convicted of shoplifting and once, and it's been 10 years, the community, there's no discernible risk for community or victim in that process, and it's a reasonably easy administrative process to consider it. If you've been convicted of murder, rape, or very serious crimes, of course, there's a lot more to consider. There's the interests of the community to consider. There's the interests of the victims to consider. The last minister wasn't terribly good at that, but certainly you have to consider the impact on society if the record is expunged and the risks that go along with that, because of course there are risks, and we're all aware of that. So we all understand that expungement gives you a second chance, and I'm sure most people believe in second chances. Having paid your debt to society by serving your time in prison, you should be allowed to reintegrate into society with as few impediments as possible. But if you're a danger to society, if you pose a threat to society, there's a risk for society in expunging your record so that when you integrate, people are not aware of your past. That has to be considered very carefully. So then it's a weighing up of interests. It becomes a lot more complex.
Yeah, absolutely, as it should be. And speaking of just weighing up the risk and weighing up the impact on expungement and so on, for those of us who have been found guilty of, let's call it a petty crime, and the 10-year period has passed, and perhaps even the COVID-19 era convictions and fines and so on, when it has taken longer than it should have, the impact on those people and that segment of the community is enormous. Lost economic opportunity being just one of them.
Well, it's a huge impact. There's, of course, the inevitable stigma. There's the fact that wherever you go and you have to fill in a form somewhere, you have to disclose that. People view you through that prism. It affects the entire spectrum of your life. Mm-hmm. And it makes finding employment practically impossible. In a job market where over 50% of the population are unemployed, to try and compete for a job with people who don't have a criminal record when you do have one, makes it exceptionally difficult and requires a massive amount of good faith from the person who's going to employ you.